Grief is the invisible weight we carry when life snatches away what our heart wasn't ready to let go of. And yet, we live in a world that often asks us to move on long before we've even caught our breath. But how do you move forward when a part of you feels permanently anchored to the past? That's what we're uncovering today, because if you've ever felt like the sadness is swallowing you whole, you're not alone. But you don't have to stay stuck there. Let's journey together, not to erase grief, but to understand it, manage it, and even transform it into a quiet strength that guides you forward. Grief is not a malfunction of the heart or a flaw in character. It is a deeply human response to loss, a reflection of the bonds we've cherished, the dreams we've nurtured, and the connections that once gave us meaning. Yet in our haste to rid ourselves of pain, we begin to treat grief like an unwelcome guest that must be evicted quickly. But have we ever paused to ask, why is it there in the first place? Grief arrives because something of profound value has been removed from the fabric of our life. It is the psyche's way of mourning not just the absence, but the significance of that which was lost. Trying to bypass it, suppress it, or silence it is like trying to heal a wound by pretending it does not exist. The first step in truly managing grief is to understand that it is not a disorder to cure but an emotion to honor. It speaks to the depth of our connections, to the meaning that relationships and experiences brought to our lives. It is a natural process, an inner pilgrimage through the valley of sorrow where every step, however painful, is essential for healing. When we allow ourselves to sit with grief instead of pushing it away, we begin to listen to what it teaches about our attachments, our vulnerabilities, and ultimately, about the self that survives even after profound loss. In the shadow of grief, there lies a subtle but dangerous inclination, the withdrawal into emotional isolation. Pain convinces us that no one could possibly understand the depth of our sorrow, so we retreat, quietly nursing our wounds in solitude. But human beings are not designed to suffer alone. The mind may seek solitude, but the heart aches for connection, for the reassurance that our pain is seen, heard, and held. The tragedy of isolation is that it amplifies grief's echo, turning it into a deafening silence that consumes our joy, our motivation, even our will to move forward. Speaking about grief, whether in whispered conversations, shared memories, or written words, begins to chip away at this isolating wall. It is in the simple act of expressing sorrow that we start to metabolize it, transforming it from an unbearable burden into a shared human experience. Empathy, when given or received, does not erase grief, but it softens its sharpest edges, reminding us that in our vulnerability, we are profoundly connected to one another. Grief does not respect calendars or clocks. It does not arrive with a predictable pattern, nor does it leave when society thinks it should. And yet, we often measure our healing against artificial timelines imposed by others or even by ourselves. We whisper to our aching hearts, "By now, I should be better," as if healing is a destination we can arrive at by sheer willpower. But grief is not linear. It spirals, it recedes, and it returns, often when we least expect it. A smell, a place, a song, and suddenly the wound reopens, reminding us that the heart keeps its own memory. This does not signify failure. It signifies that we loved deeply enough for our soul to remember. When we judge ourselves for not being over it yet, we only deepen our suffering by layering shame over sorrow. The truth is, grief carves its own path unique to each of us. To heal, we must relinquish the illusion of deadlines. We must understand that every tear, every moment of longing, is part of an intricate dance between remembrance and recovery. Some days we may stand tall, capable of laughter and lightness, and on others, we may crumble under the same weight we thought we had already set down. Both are valid. Both are part of the process. Grief will take the time it needs not to punish us, but to reshape us. With every significant loss, there comes an inevitable question. Who am I now? Because grief doesn't just take a person, a relationship, or a dream. It strips away a part of our identity that was intertwined with what we lost. If I was a spouse, a parent, a friend, and that connection is severed, what remains of me? The grief of losing someone is often accompanied by the grief of losing oneself. Yet, Within this painful unraveling lies a quiet invitation to rediscover who we are when the familiar is gone. It is an uncomfortable, often terrifying space, but also a sacred one. We are given a chance to reconstruct ourselves, piece by piece, with the wisdom of experience, the tenderness of sorrow, and the courage to redefine our existence. In this process, we do not erase the past. We integrate it into a new version of ourselves, one that carries the legacy of what was lost, not as a burden, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the aftermath of loss, there exists a peculiar emptiness, a space once filled by a person, a role, or a cherished routine. And within that space, chaos often brews, for the mind struggles to comprehend how life can continue in the face of such void. This is where the power of rituals steps in, not as hollow customs, but as deeply personal acts that offer structure to an otherwise formless grief. Lighting a candle, visiting a grave, reciting a prayer, planting a tree in their memory. These gestures might seem small, but they hold immense psychological power. They become the bridges between what was and what remains, allowing us to keep the connection alive without being imprisoned by the loss. Rituals give us a way to honor, to remember, and paradoxically, to heal. They tell the heart that while the physical presence is gone, the relationship can still evolve, albeit in a different dimension. In a world that often demands we forget and move on, rituals allow us to remember and still move forward. They create a rhythm in the disarray, a gentle reminder that while grief may be a solitary journey, we are not truly alone in it. One of the most insidious companions of grief is guilt. It creeps in uninvited, whispering questions that torment the already weary heart. Did I do enough? Could I have saved them? Should I have been there more? These questions are natural, yet they can become chains that bind us to perpetual suffering if left unchecked. What we fail to realize is that guilt, when it comes to grief, is often a misplaced sense of control. It is the mind's desperate attempt to rewrite the past, to regain agency in a situation that was, by its very nature, beyond our command. But self-punishment does not rewrite history. It only deepens the wound. Here, self-compassion is not a luxury. It is an imperative. To speak to oneself with kindness, to forgive oneself for being human, for not knowing better, for not being able to prevent the inevitable. This is not an escape from accountability, but a recognition that grief itself is heavy enough without the added weight of blame. Healing begins when we offer ourselves the same tenderness we would readily extend to someone else in pain. Grief has an undeniable power to immobilize, to render life's colors dull and its rhythms slow. Yet within this paralysis lies a dormant potential, the capacity to transmute pain into purpose. The question is not whether grief changes us. The question is how we allow it to shape our next chapter. Many who have walked through the valley of sorrow eventually find themselves yearning not just to survive, but to create meaning from their suffering. This is not about distracting oneself from the pain, nor is it about rushing towards forced positivity. It is about acknowledging that while grief may have shattered parts of us, it has also awakened a depth we never knew existed. When we channel this depth into acts of service, creativity, or connection, we are not denying the grief. We are honoring it by ensuring it does not go in vain. A mother who volunteers for those who've lost children, an artist who paints their sorrow onto canvas, a teacher who guides others through loss. These are not stories of escape, but of transformation. Grief, when given purpose, becomes less of a life sentence and more of a legacy. It is the conscious decision to let the memory of what was lost light the way for others who still wander in the dark. Grief, if listened to carefully, is not merely a voice of mourning. It is a teacher that arrives unbidden yet leaves behind profound lessons. It teaches us the impermanence of all things, the delicate nature of human connections, and the urgency of living with intention. It reminds us that every embrace, every conversation, every ordinary day is a treasure we often overlook until it becomes a memory. Grief teaches us patience, not just with time, but with ourselves. It reveals the strength hidden beneath our fragility, the courage that arises when everything familiar has been stripped away. To see grief not as a punishment but as a teacher is to reclaim agency over our lives. It allows us to integrate the loss, to carry it not as a wound that festers, but as a scar that speaks of survival, of growth, of a life enriched by understanding its own vulnerability. In embracing grief as a teacher, we step into a deeper, more compassionate version of ourselves, one that is not broken, but profoundly human. Grief will visit all of us. It is a cost of loving deeply and living fully, but it doesn't have to define you. It can shape you into someone stronger, more compassionate, more alive than you ever imagined. I want to know, what has grief taught you? Share your experiences in the comments, because your story might be the beacon someone else needs right now. If this conversation touched something in you, like this video, share it with someone you love, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights like this. And tell me, what topics would you like us to explore next? Let's build a space where healing, growth, and meaningful conversations thrive together.